Good morning, everyone. We're going to get going on the webinar in just another couple of minutes, allowing a little time for folks to switch from calls and get in here. So thank you very much for joining um, at the top of our time. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Good morning. I see a few folks continue to log in. We're going to just allow for another minute and we'll be back. So good morning, everyone. We were allowing a couple minutes to let folks get logged in. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and start with a little bit of the housekeeping. Next slide. Thank you. So this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. And one of the most important reasons for us to have the call today is really the opportunity to have questions, discussion, feedback from all of the participants. And the format today allows us to be able to raise your hand. Down at the bottom, you're going to see the raise hand function. And so we folks are going to be muted throughout the call, but we will be able to unmute you and call on you. And so don't be shy. Go ahead and raise your hand throughout the conversation and we'll be able to unmute and gather your ideas. All right, let's get going. Okay. So as I mentioned with the mute and unmute, the most important part today is really for us to get feedback from you. And the workshop today, we want to be able to collaborate on the basin-wide adaptation strategies and mitigation projects in the C-7 watershed. And it's really aimed at enhancing flood resilience in preparation of future conditions, including sea level rise, climate change, land use changes, and heightened groundwater levels. Now, what we're going to run through today is we'll hand it off to the district to have their opening remarks. We'll learn a little bit more on the broader FPLOS program and a C-7 project overview. We'll talk about the survey and also the municipal efforts that we're seeing to date. We'll have an opportunity to discuss the activities in the C-7 project and what the team is seeing for some of the results. Of course, throughout this time, there's always opportunity for questions and discussion throughout, but we will have a dedicated audience question and discussion session before we move into project next steps and, of course, some closing comments. With that said, I would say we could move into the webinar portion. I'd like to go ahead and thank the project team. You'll be seeing presenters today from the South Florida Water Management District, Taylor Engineering, also supported with Ancloak Consulting, Moffitt and Nickel, and Nova Consulting as well. Thank you very much, team. Now, to give us a district welcome and big picture, I would like to introduce Dr. Carolina Maran. She's the South Florida Water Management District Resiliency Officer. So Carolina, take it away.
Thank you very much, Lynette. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Coming in well, thank you.
Perfect. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And thank you for the FPLOS team and the consulting team for organizing this important workshop and discussion here with us today. And I want to start, I have one slide there. You can go next, please. So I want to start by talking a little bit about the South Florida Studies Integration. So I'm going to start with the very big picture of the many efforts going on in South Florida. And we borrowed this image here from Miami-Dade County that really talks a little bit about how those different studies overlap and how we are looking at those different pieces through those different coordination study efforts, but really through a coordinated and really integrated effort. So we have local governments, we have regional agencies, counties, regional agencies, and also the Army Corps here, really developing a series of studies that touch what we are now naming and labeling as resiliency, but really touching this multiple aspects of how we want to be able to manage water, reduce flood risks in the region, and really identify a series of solutions that need to happen in a coordinated fashion. So the major effort of integration is something that is very important here. We really need to be able to be talking with those projects teams, exchanging information, and walking along with them as we advance findings through those studies. And I'm here today to really reinforce that and affirm to you all that we have been doing that. We are working very closely with the local governments, with the Army Corps, helping to make any bridge that is needed there, and really walking throughout those studies together with those multiple agencies. So if you go to the next step here, I'm going to emphasize a little bit two of those studies, because I think that's really where we have significant overlap. So you also heard about the CNSF flood resiliency study. Many of us refer to that as Section 216 study. So this is the authorization internally at the Army Corps language that allow us to start this study. So, but CNSF flood resiliency 216 is the same thing. It's one study that is actually borrowing a lot of the tools and knowledge that we built to the level of service, the flood protection level of service program, to this 10 years of program implementation at this point. So this is under what the Army Corps line calls as FRM, flood risk management. So it's a line of authorizations, a separate line under the Army Corps word that really funds the studies focused on flood risk management. And that's exactly, it's very similar to the level of service program. We are here really talking about rainfall, stormwater, runoff, how we can move water, how we can use the existing infrastructure that we have in place to reduce flood risks. So those two studies overlap significantly, and we have, to the good, as a positive note, we have been using the same models, the very similar assumptions. Of course, we have some assumptions that we can take at the local level and some assumptions that are made differently at the federal level. But I would say significant overlap and a lot of common findings coming from both of those studies. Both of those studies are ongoing and they will continue to be moving forward. And the main reason we have this, and we made a decision as an agency to continue on developing, especially the level of service studies phase 2, which is what we have today in this workshop, is really because we understand we have some flexibility that we can do that are not provided through the authorizations at the federal level. And also, we can work to cover perhaps some gaps that we are not going to be covering under the federal authorization. So the limitations that we have under the 216 authority, we can identify, we can study, we can assess through the level of service program. So we will be, again, as I was saying, working very closely, coordinating between the two project teams, and really utilizing the flood protection level of service phase 2 framework to continue making assessments that are basin-wide. That's a very important characteristic of what we have here with phase 2 studies. We are looking at strategies that are beyond the primary system, that are beyond like the primary canal, the major coastal structures that can be look at the entire basin, especially like storage alternatives as well. The current scope that we have for the CNSF flood resiliency study is focused on highly vulnerable infrastructure along the primary system, and also really under the limitations of the flood risk management umbrella. So what we can do to complement the analysis, to allow us to look one step further and really to continue on the path of the level of service programs as our priority here at South Florida Water Management District, is have a broader assessment, look at the basin-wide as a whole, look at the contribution from the secondary systems into the primary system. There is a big interrelation there that we need to be able to look to those studies. And we also have a little flexibility even on the way that we can look at storm surge risks, for instance, through the level of service program. So we are learning, we are looking at all those alternatives, we are looking at these strategies together, but I think it's important to tell you all why we have those two studies, why we will continue on this path. The level of service is a priority for South Florida Water Management District, and we want to continue to perform those basin-wide assessments in all those basins as we navigate on this assessment route along with the Army Corps of Engineers as well. So we are learning all of that together, and we are, of course, bringing information from the two studies and exchanging between all of them. So you have a quick glance here on the schedule. One important thing to talk about that is that we are a little bit far ahead on the level of service as well. We started this study, the whole process of the level of service program started, as I said, a decade ago. This specific study for the C-7 Basin started back in 2023, and we have been really kind of advancing significant efforts in a faster pace a little bit when we compare to the CNSF where we are now. So we are already under the phase that we are looking at project alternatives here. On the CNSF, we are going one step back. We are looking at vulnerabilities, so flood vulnerabilities. When the Army Corps talks about the future without scenarios, that is really what the state of Florida calls as flood vulnerabilities. So looking at future conditions without any project implementation and understanding what's the flood vulnerability at that point in the future. So that's where we are with the CNSF flood resiliency study. As I said, a little bit of difference. Their time frame is 2085. We have 2075 as part of the level of service. And here you just have a little bit of the task that will be developed. You can see that we do end this FPLOS basically mid-2025, when we will have one of the major deliverables too from the 216, which will be the TSP, the Tentative Selected Plan. So I think it's important for you all to understand why we are here, how we are ensuring that those two studies are communicating with each other, and how the project teams are really collaborating as we find those alternatives to those basins and throughout the phases of both of those studies. I have one more slide. Thank you. And so just at the end, I have we put together, thanks for the whole project team here, we put together this image just to show you, for instance, at the C-7 Basin, how those project alternatives are being assessed through those two studies. So for instance, you can see in green here, we are pointing to canal enhancement. So the major primary canal, C-7 canal, along with the S-27 coastal structure being the main focus of the 216 study. Those are pointed in green in this map. And on the blue, you can see a series of strategies, project alternatives that we'll be assessing as part of the level of service study. We will also look at the primary canal. We will also look at the S-27 coastal structure. Of course, the study needs to be integrated at the FPLOS arena too. But we will ensure that, again, project recommendations are aligned between the two studies. But we do have a little more flexibility to look at basin-wide projects, secondary. Again, I'm going to repeat that because I think it's a little bit of what we want to get out of this workshop today. We really want to be able to focus on what we need at the C-7 Basin, in addition to what we know we might be getting out of the 216 CNSF flood resiliency study. So secondary canal enhancements, secondary canal interconnections, storage basin-wide, integrated nature-based green infrastructure solutions, and really interbasin connectivity, and really what else do we need to understand as a basin that we can do here to reduce flood risks. With that, I'm going to close my opening remarks. I'm going to say thank you again for all of you that are dedicating your time to help us navigate on this path. There is a lot that we are doing, and we appreciate you really dedicating a portion of your time to provide feedback, provide input. We value this input extremely, and we want to be able to advance on those studies with input from all the experts, from the local community, from people that are living in this basin. So we really appreciate you being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moran. And before you go, I do see that we have a hand up. If we could have that person come off of mute, and Carolina and Dr. Moran available, please.
Sure.
Hello.
Hello.
I was wondering if there are any plans to retrofit the G72 structure. As it is now, I don't think it's an operational structure that you can raise and lower.
Yeah, I will ask you to wait a little bit as the project team advances this presentation. This question is great. It's just a little bit too early because we are going to navigate on all the parts of the basin and the structures. So if you're okay with that, I will say, can you wait until we get to that point in the presentation to begin looking at what we are accounting for? And I mean, the workshop today is really how you can provide input to us on things we need to be seen as alternatives. So we are really open to discuss the operation of this structure and how it can help us on flood risk management at the C-7 Basin.
Yeah, I was originally just going to post the question in the chat, but the chat's been disabled.
Oh, this is something we can work on. I'll check here with the project team. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. In fact, thank you, Dr. Moran. Now, let's go ahead and invite Dr. Hangying Zhao, the Flood Protection Level of Service Program Manager at the district and the co-project manager of this initiative, to provide an overview of the program and this project. Dr. Zhao.
Thank you. So can you hear me?
Yes, coming in well.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for attending this C-7 Adaptation and the Mitigation workshop. I will give a quick overview of the flood protection level service program and this C-7 study. Next slide, please. Let me start by sharing some numbers. We have over 2,200 miles of canals, over 2,100 miles of levees and berms, and also 160 major drainage basins, over 1,500 water control structures, including 89 pump stations. And we have over 60,000 acres of constructed wetland system. The Lake Okeechobee has a water surface area of over 450,000 acres. And the water conservation area is about 960,000 acres. So we have a large flood control infrastructure system. Next slide, please. Meanwhile, we encounter numerous challenges. Rapid urban development and population growth, significantly contrasting the condition in 1940s. Many structures have already surpassed their intended lifespan. Climate change has been testified at Congress is turning extreme events into new norms. And for Miami-Dade County, we have so many vulnerable coastal gravity structures. All of these factors underscore the significance of the level of service program with Safeguarding Tomorrow today. Next. So in a phased approach, the level of service program is really to assess flood protection level of service across all 16 counties in an 8 to 10-year cycle, evaluate and prioritize long-term district infrastructure needs, identify at-risk structures and needed improvements, and provide a formal process to initiate mitigation and adaptation efforts. Design, permit, and construct identified projects to achieve resilient flood protection goals. Next, please. As both Dr. Kadach and Dr. Moran mentioned, the purpose of today's workshop is to brainstorm adaptation and mitigation options to help build flood resilience for C-7 or Little River watershed. This is your hometown, and you all have a lot of knowledge of the basin. And here is just a quick summary of this watershed. We have 6 cities: Village of El Porto, City of Hialeah, Miami Shore Village, City of Miami, North Miami Beach, and the City of Opelika. There are 254,000 residents based on the 2022 census database, and also additional visitors and workers. Over 118 critical assets, including airport, fire stations, waste transport facilities, hospital, medical facilities, public school, law enforcement center, etc. And 46% of population are disadvantaged under the climate change category. In terms of CDC Social Vulnerability Index, 67% of population has an index of 0.8 or higher, which is the highest ranking. And 27% of population has an index between 0.6 and 0.8, which is the second highest ranking. Next. All of these underscore the significance of this phase 2 study and also various ongoing efforts. This basin received the FEMA BRIC Award, which will jumpstart several critical project components, such as enhance S27 structure and construct flood barrier, install forward pump station, and install living shoreline and wetland restorations, build canoe and kayak launch area, and also install park amenities with shaded area for education and recreation purpose. Second, the district has already advanced in a no-regret strategy since 2023, the S27 pump station design. This is an ongoing effort. And at the federal level, C-7 is also a key basin included in the CNSF flood resilience study or 216 study. We will coordinate closely with the CNSF study team for the regional level components to ensure the optimized recommendations. Concurrently, this C-7 adaptation and mitigation study with the objective to develop a comprehensive strategy, which will include projects from regional level and local level, including natural and natural-based solutions, and including green infrastructures. Next, please. Just want to echo our Chief Resilience Officer, Dr. Moran, just said in the beginning. We understand the challenges ahead and recognize the key components to make it a success. Collaboration is paramount at both planning and implementation phases. Adapting a basin-wide coordinated approach is essential to address both local and regional priorities needs effectively, and embracing a hybrid approach, integrating both gray and green infrastructures alongside nature-based solutions is imperative. And implementing a no-regret actions in the short term, but ensuring they're robust, adaptable, and evolvable over time. Toward the end of this workshop, we will share with you how you can actively participate and contribute to this project. So let's move forward together, addressing these challenges head-on and build a more resilient future for our Little River watershed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zhao. Now, I'd like to just pause for a moment. We've heard a lot of information from Drs. Moran and Zhao, and I want to just pause for a moment and allow for any questions or clarifications. Remember, you can go ahead and raise your hand and we will unmute you. I see a question. Let me see who we've got. And I would like to ask participants as they come off of mute to say their name and organization. And I see that we've got Munir Ingram. You can come off of mute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Coming in just fine, thank you.
Okay, how are you? My name is Munir Ingram. I'm with the Little River Farms Homeowners Association and surrounding community of the C-7 watershed. I'd like to know if the information as far as developments, we have two developments, one that's directly on the identified area of the enhancement zone that they plan on putting a multi-complex apartment on the basin of the C-7 directly on the lake, on the C-7 canal. But there's also the Silver Blue Lake that is adjacent to the C-7. I'd like to know if the studies have been done to see what filling in that water storage would cause to the surrounding community as far as flood resiliency, as far as lake center development, trying to fill in things like 56 acres of the Silver Blue Lake in the general area that you see that's been identified around the C-7 canal.
Hey, Mr. Ingram, I'm very glad you can attend these meetings since our phone conversation, I think about 2 weeks ago. Thank you so much for joining this meeting. And we definitely hear your concerns. And I think we will have a dedicated discussion as Lynette mentioned in the beginning, and will not be okay. We put this onto discussion during the Q&A section. And also we have some representatives from county here, and they will also be able to help answer some of your questions. Will that be okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other clarifications on the presentations? Okay, let's go ahead and move to the next section. So I'm Lynette Cardoche, and I've been supporting this project. I work with Moffitt and Nickel, and I'd like to just move into discussing a C-7 survey and other municipal efforts that are going on. You may recall that with your invitation, there's a survey link, and that link has 8 questions. And the intent is to continue to collect your experiences. And as mentioned previously, the real goal is that when we're looking at our flood risk reduction activities, they ultimately complement each other. So here you see the survey link, and you'll be getting the slides too, but also was in your invitation. And we're going to be leaving it open for 2 weeks. Today, we want to listen to your experiences, and no doubt there'll be, more ideas that are spurred with today's workshop. So if you can think of anything during the workshop, of course, let's have that discussion and give us those ideas. But also, if you think of anything after the workshop, let's go ahead and use that link or contact the program managers to give some ideas. Next slide. Now, you're going to see on this survey the 8 questions, and these are the first 4. And we really want to understand more on the involvement for flood mitigation and adaptation planning, and also get your feedback on the types of changes that you may have seen in your flooding conditions in the last 5 or 10 years, and also any specific documentation you may have. There may be some limitations in the existing flood control system that you're able to see that we would like to also collect from you. And if you have any specific plans or actions that are addressing any of these limitations, and also as you're looking for project planning and design, how are you incorporating your future conditions? And these can be, for example, sea level rise or increased rainfall. Next slide. We're also interested in the use of any green infrastructure or any sorts of technologies that you have for flood mitigation, and to be able to describe those projects and initiatives. Now, part of that also involves understanding if you have any specific locations or open spaces that can accommodate any flood mitigation activities. And that can be things like, do you have any parks or recreational areas, vacant lots? Are folks looking at roadside areas, medians, anything on waterfronts, any place that there could be potential water storage activities or water collection? And also understanding as we're going through, are there any expectations for this FPLOS study? And are there any existing flood mitigation projects or initiatives in your areas that you have seen that have been particularly effective for your community? So those are the 8 questions. Now, as we move to the next slide, I want to just touch that there are many activities that are already going on. And so we want to be sure that we're collecting those activities, but also being able to share the things that are happening in the community. And so, for example, we've already seen that there are activities with county adaptation action areas. And, this is a designation in the coastal management element of the local government comprehensive plan. And it identifies 1 or more areas that experience coastal flooding due to extreme high tides and storm surge, and they're vulnerable to the related impacts of rising sea levels. And the purpose is really for prioritizing funding of infrastructure needs and adaptation planning. And it allows us to really look at how to adjust planning to the needs of the community. And so, for example, we've got the Little River Adaptation Action Area where the county, the village of El Portal, and then the residents of the Little River area, be they in El Portal or an unincorporated, the county, to be able to look at flooding projects and also things that impact environmental health. So, for example, the Connect to Protect project is something that's happening in there while the county is also continuing to look at other flood protection efforts. Another good example is like the city of North Miami's Good Neighbor Stormwater Park. And I think folks will recall that this is one of those projects that was launched in 2019, and it was a competition to transform an empty flood-prone lot in North Miami into a safe, usable space to bring community members together. And those are the pictures down below. And the design winner, Department Design Office, proposed this particular lot to be turned into an open-air community space that doubles as a stormwater reservoir. So effectively being able to use homeowner's lot where the house was removed, and that particular retention pond holds water for up to 20 of the surrounding lots. So are there other things out there that allow us to be able to use some smaller sections to provide some community flood risk reduction? We're also seeing that municipalities are installing stormwater pumps. Probably the most well-known are the ones happening in Miami Beach, but we know the city of Miami is also having some installation of stormwater pumps. On the operational side, understanding where folks have been changing maintenance routines, oftentimes being able to just keep your stormwater system up to date really enhances the capacity. And finally, serving as information clearinghouses. So we know that municipalities, the county, and other jurisdictions are becoming hubs to be able to distribute information, much like this conversation today, when we're looking at how to get additional help from FEMA, for example, for repetitive loss areas, anything that may be happening from HUD, of course, the Corps of Engineer studies, and the Water Management District. So with that, I would like to hand it off to Michael Del Charco, Vice President at Taylor Engineering, to give us an update on the assessments and results to date. Mr. Del Charco?
Thank you, Lynette. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending. And I'm going to go through a lot of the slides and the modeling results to date. We couldn't show everything, so we're showing some summaries for you. Eventually, all the data will be available through the district, but for now, we'll be presenting some summaries. And I do have Joe Wilder on the call with us, and he's the lead engineer and modeler for this, so he can answer any of your detailed modeling questions. There's a lot to go through here, so be sure to take notes, and at the end, we'll have time for questions, and we'd love to chat with you. So as others have said, the assessment is really looking at the primary system here of the C-7, looking at the effects of changes in sea level rise. You'll see on my slides I say SLR, and that just means sea level rise. And the way the district handles sea level rise for these FPLOS studies is to simply add 1 foot, 2 foot, and 3 foot to the existing conditions. And that, in that way, it's just kind of an easy way to be consistent across the entire water management district, but it really gives us a good idea of what the watershed, what the impacts to the watershed will be under those future scenarios. So we've been through setting up the model and looking at, we calibrated the model, validated the model, looked great. We're running current conditions for 4 return periods, and then looking at future conditions for those same 4 periods with sea level rise. This modeling does include future rainfall and future groundwater levels, as well as future land use conditions and projects. So some key things here on the left, you can see that's simply the topography. And in the C-7 basin, you can see the natural high ridges there towards the bay. And those ridges really channel the natural channel of the Little River through the system there. But you can see on the right that the actual C-7 canal was cut through the middle of that higher area. And that does create some problems for drainage in the basin. These red lines here, so the primary canal here, and you see these red trunks here. These are sewer pipes, storm sewers that we've modeled with some other sections going into them. And so these are the key ways that these areas are draining. And you'll see in some model results later that there are some problems with that. But the natural channel comes up this way, and you can see you can see in the topography here, then we'll have some flooding conditions in that area. So we're looking specifically at 3 FPLOS performance metrics here. And what I mean by that, PM1 is looking at the stage in the canal and if it's overtopping its banks or how it responds to storm events. Then we're looking at maximum flood depth maps, which is PM5, and flood duration maps, which is PM6. The model is an integrated groundwater surface water model. It looks at overland flow, unsaturated flow, groundwater flow. It's fully dynamic channel flow, which means we can model all the gates and operations and all the structures that are there. But the groundwater component, as you all know, is very important in this modeling system. So the model was set up and calibrated to September 2017 Hurricane Irma, and it was validated using two storms, the 2022 Tropical Storm Alex and the May 2020 no-named event. The input data was the NOAA Atlas 14. We used storm surge. This is an example down here of the storm surge hydrographs that we used at the mouth of the system. It runs all the way down through the intercoastal. And then we were using the end of wet season groundwater elevation map. So we're running the storm events that we're running are the 5, 10, 25, and 100-year recurrence frequency events. And we're using the gate operations from S27 based on the Water Management District's gate operation rules. So the first bit of results, let me explain this very busy chart to you. So this is looking at the peak stage of the canal. So here's the S27 structure, and then we go all the way upstream of the canal, all the way to the Palmetto Expressway. This is elevation in feet. And then each of these lines represents, this dark brown line represents the North Bank Canal. So basically we took a survey of the North Bank Canal levee, and then the South Bank in this lighter brown. These diamonds are the bridge low chord. So the low chord of the bridge is at these spots. And then each of these colored lines represents a storm event. So the blue is the 100-year event. The red is 25-year, green 10-year, and this gray is the 5-year. So what you can see in this graphic is here near 16th Ave, you can see it's overtopping the North and the South Bank during the 100-year event. It gets really close during the 25-year event, but isn't actually going over. So that's what we look at to see where we're having flooding problems and what's causing the flooding problems. So obviously these are key areas of interest, and we'll be digging into those and looking at projects that will help mitigate these overbank flooding events. So overbank flooding is one source of flood waters in the basin, but the other source is just rainfall straight on the basin and the inability of the system to handle that rainwater and get the water to the C-7 canal. So we talk about the primary canal being the C-7, and then the secondary canal being those stormwater systems that are moving the water out of the neighborhoods and into the C-7 canal. And so those, just looking at the pluvial, the rainfall that's hitting the basin, you can see that there's issues with getting that rainfall to the C-7. So the districts, one of their primary focus is making sure that C-7 canal has the capacity to receive those secondary and tertiary waters, flood waters, so that the C-7 canal is able to receive those waters during an event. So this plot here on the top left is the 25-year event with 0 sea level rise. And you can see so here's the S27 structure, and the canal goes like this. You're probably familiar with that. These dark blue colors are just ponds and lakes and such. But you can see you're starting to get some flooding depth here. So this is the depth of flooding depth. So this green is 1 to 1.25, lighter green up to 1.5. So you can see in this area, we're starting to get up to 1.5 feet of flooding. And then you see these pieces out here where you're getting further depth of flooding. So that's the 25-year. If you add in 1 foot of sea level rise, you can immediately start to see that the water is backing up. The system isn't able to get the water out as fast, and it's creating some problems, some flooding problems in these areas. Bottom left is the 25-year with 2 feet of sea level rise. You start seeing much more warmer colors in this flooding scenarios. But it looked pretty good along the canal up in here. And then the 25-year with 3 foot sea level rise, you see very dark reds and much deeper flooding, over 2 feet of flooding in these areas here. Again, you remember that this is kind of the more natural canal, and then this part was dredged through years ago. So that's what the results look like for PM5 flood depth. And of course, we do this for all the flood events, but we're just showing you the 25-year. So looking at groundwater conditions, this is looking at maximum groundwater height above land topography. So basically what you're seeing is this is, this ground here is so saturated that the groundwater is commingling with the surface water, and there's really no way to get that water out. So this is obviously is a flooding condition that's harder to rectify, and takes a lot of different kind of mitigation approaches. If you look at the same thing, the 100-year with future conditions. 100-year with sea level rise 3, you see a lot of the flooding in there. And of course, the sea level rise 3 is also affecting the groundwater table too. So you see that the whole basin is really going to be affected. Of course, this is the most extreme event, right? 100-year with 3 feet of sea level rise. But you can see the groundwater exceeding the land topography. Looking at future conditions, so this is again the 100-year with sea level rise 3. We're looking at max canal stages, so the maximum canal stage in here in the canal, and then looking at the topo here. So you can see that if you look at these numbers here, this is the depth in the canal. So look at this like kind of gray number here. That's 6 to 6.25 feet. And then you see that the ground surface is much higher than that in this local area. So the topography is indicating that there's still room to move water down into the canal and move it out of the canal. So this high ground here is, you still see these flooding areas in here, right? So part of the mitigation effort is then to figure out how to get the water into the canal there. And same here, the topography is low here and the flooding is over 5.25. So you see just the different, when I look at a map like this, I see different mitigation efforts that have to happen in different areas, right? So just interesting to note. That's the beauty of modeling, is we can look at things like this. And then lastly, I wanted to show you this. This is the duration of flooding. And it's interesting to know, how long are these things flooded? Is this an hour-long peak or much longer? And so this is the 100-year with 0 sea level rise, flood duration in hours. So something like this yellow is 4 to 8 hours of flooding. And then as the colors get more into the blues, you can see it increases quite a bit. So you have areas like this that are going to be flooded for quite a long time, right? 48 to 96 hours and 96 to 192 hours. So these areas are going to be wet for a good long while. And then if you add in sea level rise 3, you can see obviously lots more flooding in all those areas. So in summary, the C-7 canal is predicted to be overtopped in several segments during even just the 5-year storm event. So that's something that needs to be mitigated quickly. The S-27 is unable to maintain those water levels for any of the storm events and will be overtopped during all storm events. And then many areas in the watershed had land surfaces above the peak elevation, but still flood, which means they're impacted by local flooding problems. And so that's each of these, we're looking at different mitigation processes that we need to deal with to alleviate the flooding. So looking at phase 2, the phase 1 part of the district studies was mentioned before, is really to look at and assess what is going on in the basin and what is the flood protection level of service. And so once you've done that, you start looking at the mitigation and planning projects, adaptation and mitigation, and that's what we're doing here. So we're starting to brainstorm different ideas on what can we do, and whether we can model it or not, what can we do in the watershed. So we really want to come up with a basin-wide adaptation strategy and different mitigation projects for the watershed to improve that level of service. And of course, all these are going to be in collaboration with, as Dr. Moran said at the beginning, with the Corps, the counties, all the other projects that are going on. So what have you guys been doing to address flood mitigation? Lynette mentioned a few of them just before this, and we've been brainstorming some ideas. And so I wanted to present those to kind of get the wheels turning and see which ones of these you may already be pushing on and how we can lean into that and move those forward. So some examples, Omar asked about the S-27 structure and improvements there. As was mentioned before, there is a FEMA BRIC grant that is looking at hardening that structure, tying into higher elevation so that it won't be, the gate won't be overtopped by storm surge. And then adding in the BRIC grant is adding in a 500 CFS forward pump there. We will be looking that we're not going to limit our mitigation activities to that. We'll be looking at different pump sizes, but that's going to be the baseline. And then the district has also been working on using this high school property as a flowway and kind of storage. So it'd only be used during extreme events, extreme flooding, but it would allow some storage of the water to come through here. Of course, all these fields and everything would still be usable by the high school most of the time, but during peak flood events, it could add some environmental benefits. So next we looked at, we showed you the canal areas that are overtopped, and so we can then go in and look at specifically the bank, canal banks right here and here, and then look at raising those banks to keep these overflow events from happening. Looking also at interbasin connections, the district's always keen on seeing if we can just move water out of the basin altogether. So there are these connections to the other basins. Right now, they're minimal connections. While they do exist, they would need some work to improve them, improve the capacity that they can handle. But those are options, and then possibly putting pumps in those areas to move water out of the basin. That would assume that you had some local flooding event that was contained to the C-7 basin and not necessarily the whole area, because if the whole area is flooded, then they can't receive the water either. But these are certainly options that we're looking at. This doesn't include a G72 option, which we're going to talk about in a second. Some ideas on environmental benefits, including, if you could take this area, which is the canal bank right now, right? If you could take this area and somehow create internal living shorelines that aren't going to affect your flood profile, but that would allow the water to meander through a more environmentally friendly bank system, it could improve the environmental benefits. So that's certainly an idea. And then you have additional storage ideas. We know park that's near and dear to everyone's heart there is the Amelia Earhart Park. It's a huge park, and you could look at, is there potential for temporary storage during an event? You wouldn't change the character of the whole park, but you would make it available for flood storage during an extreme event. There's some parks adjacent to I-95. There's a wetland north of S27. Maybe store water upstream S27, look at golf courses. So this would be an exercise. This was a map put together by the district just looking at open spaces. And are there enough open spaces that can make a difference when you're trying to hold water back during an event? Again, these are just brainstorming ideas. So look, some local drainage improvements. We see when we do the modeling, we see these areas that have very deep flooding, overland flooding during a 100-year event. And so, you have this canal right here. Is there a way to move that water from there to there? These are much further to get to. We do have these connections to stormwater. So is it possible to move the water to these stormwater connections and then get it out? So another idea to look at. We just circled 3 here. There's many more. Then looking at the G72 or the Hialeah Gardens pump, is there potential for taking the water to the west, taking it out of the G72 and then putting it in the C6 canal and get it out by the S26 or north by the S31? So again, the beautiful thing about modeling is we can run that in a model and see if the benefits are there. Then, of course, looking at operational changes, the district's always looking at tweaking their operations. So we run their standard operations as they are now, but there's certainly, you could look at drawdown scenarios before events if they're coming, or changing operations in other ways. So that's another beautiful thing about modeling, is we can look at that. Elevating buildings is always an option. And some of those low-lying areas that show a lot of flooding, maybe just raising the homes up out of the flood area is a possibility. There's state and federal programs that help fund the cost of that. I know the state recently tried to pass some more legislation on that. It didn't pass this year, but it may in future years. But there's plenty of scenarios where just elevating the buildings would help. And then, of course, looking at green infrastructure. Here's an example of a bioswale from Sarasota County, where the picture on the left is, what it looked like with just a drainage canal, and then the county went in and improved it and made it a much better stormwater system, much more able to move the water around it as the county needed. So really, these are more local micro-scale projects that can help reduce flooding in neighborhoods, and it just helps increase storage, has some water quality benefits, and groundwater recharge. So that's it for me. I think we have time for questions and comments if anybody has any. I don't see any hands raised. Oh, there we go. All right. lots of them now. Lynette, do you want to orchestrate that or?
Yeah, let's go ahead and move into the discussion period. And just a reminder that as folks ask questions, if we could go ahead and state the name and organization. And first of all, if there are any questions that are more specific to this presentation, and then broadly moving into the discussion items that we had parked from the earlier discussion. And I'm going to be going in order of the hands. So let's start with Christian. You can come off of mute, please.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think this was really helpful information, so I appreciate the the overview and the discussion of different assumptions that have been made about the modeling efforts and what adaptation options are being put out there. I did have a question. I think one of the slides that was showing the PM5 metric for flood depth, there were two slides, I think one after another. One was showing like the 100-year storm with 3 feet of sea level rise, and then the one after was focusing on the groundwater changes. Yeah, so if you could maybe just explain a little bit more about how these maps and these flood depths that assume a certain amount of sea level rise compared to, I think, the maps that were just before this showing flood depth
Well, they're
for a
based
similar scenario.
right. So the modeling is done the same, and we are just presenting the results in different ways. So that's the first thing. So this would be the 25-year modeling that we ran here was looking at just the flood depths, and then if we do have the same maps for the groundwater, but we didn't present them here. But basically, so it's the modeling is the same, and what we're changing is the boundary conditions due to sea level rise. So we add in the 1, 2, and 3 feet, and then we're also changing the groundwater layer for a future condition groundwater layer that was developed for this local area.
I got you. Okay, and then just a.
I was going to say how they compare. I think maybe what you were trying to get at. If you have a depth where it says future conditions, maximum groundwater height above topography is 2 feet, that is going to correspond back to your PM5. It will show that you have a maximum overland depth of 2 feet. So once that groundwater comes up above the surface, whether it's looked at through the groundwater post-processing or through the overland depths, they're going to register the same value. So this map is highly correlated to the maximum depth map, but it's strictly only showing areas that are actually higher than with groundwater that's higher than topography. So there's going to be some areas that have some flood depth, but you still have some depth to groundwater below the land surface. And so those are kind of filtered out of this map.
Okay, understood. I have a few other questions, but I'll let others go first and come back. Thanks.
Thank you, Christian. So, Mr. Ingram, coming back to your discussion.
Yes, how are you?
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. My name is Munir Ingram, Little River Farms HOA. Under the same slide that you have up, it identified I don't know if that's a adaptation plan to have water going into the Silver Blue Lake off of 17th Avenue. What have you done the analysis on if the approval to fill in the 29 acres or 57 acres of that lake is filled, what that would do to the groundwater in the area, but also the flooding along the communities and the residents that live along the C-7 Little River Canal going from out of Hialeah or that natural direction from 18th Avenue down into 17th Avenue and following all of that. Have those analyses been done as far as if those lakes or those storage areas are filled in, what kind of flooding or more flooding would that cause in the area?
No, we have not modeled that scenario.
Okay. But those, go ahead.
Mr. Ingram, this is Hong Ying. So in this, for the future condition, we did include the future land use map. So we did not just represent each individual future projects, but we did incorporate the future land use map. And we can take a look, maybe not right now to answer your question. We will take a look of the area you pointed out and how was it represented in our future land use map.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I see a hand up from Mr. Ishchak.
Hello, I have a question. My name is Ishtiak. I'm with the Evergreen Foundation. I have a question to Mr. Michael. Thanks for providing a summary of the model. So I just want, my first question is, are you using Mike Hydro Basin model for this one?
It's Mike Flood and Mike Shee.
Mike Flood and Mike Shee.
Mike Hydro River. Yeah, so not Mike Hydro Basin, but Mike Hydro River.
Okay, I think one of your response before was that when you do the scenario analysis in the model, what sea level boundary condition you used? You imposed those sea level on top of the existing water level data, or how did you do that? I think the question I wanted to ask is any of those run include sea level rise as well as storm surge? I see you have 2017 in the boundary.
Yeah, for the design storm events, the future condition boundaries, essentially, the district did a statistical analysis on the Virginia Key tide gauge to come up with a theoretical storm surge hydrograph. And so that was for our current conditions, baseline 2022. And then for future conditions, we simply added 1, 2, and 3 feet to whatever that hydrograph was. So that's going to include both the increase to the storm surge respectively based on a 1, 2, or 3 foot. So that's how the physical boundary along the 1D surface water was applied, as well as the 2D overland. A different process was used for groundwater.
Thank you. I think my last question is, I think when I do the modeling work, one of the challenges I face is to represent storage in the model. So you have a 2D there, but is there any consideration for future to use any projected storage, right? Other than using the Basin storage for future scenarios?
Storage options aside from what's already available within the model or within the basin. Yeah,
Yes.
That's we try to find some new storage areas. That's going to be one of the alternatives that's looked at. There's already some open lands, but perhaps there's repetitive loss areas that are not storage areas that could be turned to storage areas. But as you know, it's sometimes hard to create storage when it's simply not there. You've seen the groundwater map above land surface. Sometimes you could create storage vaults, but in a situation where you're already completely saturating the groundwater, it does become challenging. So we'll look at trying to get as much storage as we can, but in this basin it will be a challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to Mr. Murley.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent presentation and well-prepared graphics. There was that graphic at the very beginning that Carolina had where she had the aligning the district's resiliency study and 216 study. It's a very helpful. I obviously think that as we move ahead with the TSP comes out this month for the Coastal Storm Risk Management Back Bay study, we could add a line. And while all that'll be helpful, I think it comes down to the slide at the very end where there was a picture of a possible elevation. Because in the on the C-7 will be one of the areas where the TSP will propose some pilot elevations. So we could move some of these kind of, actual implementation actions ahead using various core programs, which is the gist of the presentation, which I really appreciate, which is the integration of these different projects, regardless of which core authority or which agency is running it. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move on to Ms. Davis, please?
Good morning. My name is Allie Davis, and I'm with the county's Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces Department. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was illuminating, enlightening, not things we have not seen before. However, the mitigation or adaptation areas are somewhat new. Not our park spaces, but I just wanted to elevate an input tool, a community input tool based out of the Miami or run through Miami Waterkeeper. I'm sure some of those on the call have seen it, but it's based out of the community. It comes from the community giving input on areas where there could be living shorelines, rain gardens, urban forests, or even stormwater pocket parks. I saw that in this study, we were looking at areas around the beloved Amelia Earhart Park and along Larchmont as a shoreline area, but there's other opportunities that are highlighted in that input tool, including underused green spaces, parking lots. So those interstitial spaces throughout that C-7 basin study area that might be helpful in posing some areas for consideration and some future. I think some folks are even mentioning some kind of adaptation tools as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. Thanks again for the presentation and your time this morning.
Yeah, we would appreciate any of those example projects that you have, or if there's areas that people have been considering for those, any information you have on that, we would love to take. That's exactly what we're looking for.
And I welcome Ms. Davis, if we could just get a little more information on your input tool.
Oh, so this is run out of the Miami Waterkeeper at miamiwaterkeeper.org. And I believe they still have it open, but it allows members of the public or members of certain departments to chime in and place like a geolocated dot on a map, an interactive map. And people have been suggesting not only locations, but intervention types. I could send over the web link for it. Who'd be best to send it to? Is it to you, Lynette, or is it to Michael here on the call, or how can I best share this information?
Michael is the project manager on the consulting team, but of course, anything that comes my way, we'll send. And you'll also be hearing from Ann Springston from the Water Management District, and she's the district project manager, and a lot of the information will be directed to her, and her email address will be there as well. But
Got it.
Yeah, of course, anything you guys send to us will get there, but Ann is the main point of contact.
Sure. And this isn't out of the Parks Department, but it's called the Green Infrastructure Accelerator Project through Miami Waterkeeper.
Thank you.
Of course.
I think that's it for hands raised.
Now, I'd like to just go a moment to our next slide on that, because there's some yeah.
Sorry.
No, we've got a lot of stuff going. Just next one.
Yep, sorry.
One more. So as we're going through these conversations, I'd like to get some feedback on, did you have any thoughts on the adaptation projects, the brainstorming results that Michael presented? And also, are you seeing anything with specific flood hotspots? Anything with other stormwater infrastructure projects that we should know about? I'm really grateful for the information that we've gotten so far. and just want to make sure we're not cutting discussion short. And I see Christian Camrath with his hand up. Go ahead, Christian.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep, coming in well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to, this basin, and I forgot to introduce myself earlier. I'm with the County Office of Resilience and help lead the Little River Adaptation Action Area work, which is a multi-jurisdictional planning effort that really focuses on at least initially areas east of I-95 within the Little River Basin where there's a compound flood risk. So one of those hotspot areas is where you mentioned the septic to sewer conversion efforts are happening. As Jim mentioned, it's a focus area of the Back Bay study for potential home elevation and business flood proofing. But I think, when you look at land use in this area, and I know we've been working in partnership with the district for a few years in this basin, there's really a limited space or areas to be able to store and treat water using nature-based solutions or just other more traditional surface water storage. I kind of want to elevate what Mr. Ingram was bringing up about existing storage within the basin. One of the slides you guys showed potential future storage areas, but I do think for us to really address flood risk in the basin, we have to think both about, prevention of loss of storage areas, as well as looking at new opportunities to increase storage in areas where it's not being leveraged. So I do think, and I guess would be curious about how we value those existing storage areas and their contributions to reducing flood risk in the short and long term. But I guess my question is the district, as part of its menu of tools, able to or considered where there are willing sellers to acquire property or buy space within the basin to either retrofit it from impervious surface to more impervious surface for stormwater drainage, storage, or considered how some type of voluntary home buyout program might do what I think many other flood risk and restoration projects are looked to do, which is restore the natural function of the floodplain itself. This is extremely built out community, so we're gonna need to really look at those areas, especially where there's higher groundwater, and obviously work with communities to see what sort of adaptation pathways can be taken while making smart investments in the short term for the long term. So I guess I just bring that question up about looking at acquiring private property, reaching out to folks, trying to set up some kind of incentive program for folks to be a part of that kind of a program. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but I'm curious if you could address that. Thanks.
I can take the question if you want, Honging.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you, Christian, very much for this question and this very relevant discussion. So I will start by just touching the question you asked about future land use. And maybe Joe can add a little bit later, being the really on the modeling setup for us here. But we certainly look at future land use, and we have a scenario, as you saw in the slide, that we make considerations on areas that we anticipate development to occur. Specific local projects that are not fully authorized, and the information that, if the information did not really get to us, they would probably not be part of the future without. I cannot make a statement here in terms of this development project that Mr. Munir Ingram is referring to. If he was part of the future scenario, we can confirm that with the project team. But yes, we do the best research possible to represent future land use conditions. And I would say in general, what we see is open land that is subject to development and not really stored existing lake like water bodies that would be filled in. I don't know if we have any of that possibility represented for our future scenarios, unless a very solid, fully approved project somewhere in the basin. So I'll let Joe respond to this question later, but I want to now jump to your second point about perhaps incentive programs or mechanisms that we would have to begin a process of buying some land that would certainly help to achieve flood risk benefits, flood resiliency in this basin. So the way we have been approaching this now as an agency is, yes, we are identifying projects, areas that we need to bring storage to the basin. And we will certainly start by those areas. Christian, it might make sense to you. So as an agency and as operator of the main primary system, we'll certainly prioritize the areas that are larger areas that has a very strong connection with the primary canal. So I would say those would be probably the ones that we would be ready to start purchasing land, as we can really read from this exercise that we are doing today. So from this modeling effort, when we see flood risk reduction in the basin, these storage areas, we will certainly be in a position as an agency to go ahead and make land acquisition. We will be adding those as part of our budget needs. And of course, we will depend on funding availability, but we are actively pursuing funding sources to these types of projects. In the overall strategy for the basin, we will also depend on what we are calling distributed storage, smaller storage in different parts of the basin that are definitely an effort that needs to be taken jointly by multiple agencies, local, county, and the South Florida Water Management District. We do not have like a type of incentive program to do things like that yet, but I love the way that we have been proposing and discussing. I think we should perhaps think about ways that we could do that jointly, because I hope you agree. I really think those smaller distributed storage that we needs to be pursued together as a joint effort by water management district and local and county governments. So yes, we certainly need those areas. We certainly need the storage. Every scenario that we run, we reinforce the idea that the solutions for the basins will be a combination of conveyance and storage, and we need to build storage capacity. We have extreme limitations. Joe already said that, and he will probably reinforce. We have a challenging condition in this basin to really get significant storage capacity because of the level of fully development that is already in the basin, plus porosity and the groundwater levels that we see there. But we will be thinking on how we can, and using any possibility to create storage in the basin. I hope I answer your question there, Christian, and we certainly need to engage in future conversations.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Caroline.
Yeah, Christian, I think you asked very good questions, and Carolina answered your question very well. And do you mind we follow up with you to talk more about those buyout program, incentive, and also what you said, the retrofit, convert impervious pavement to pervious pavement, those options? I think all are very good options. Can we follow up with you on this?
Yes, of course, Hamyang. That sounds great. I'll follow up your email today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd like to move to Ms. Cordero. We could have her come off mute.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Karina Cordero. I'm an engineer in Miami-Dade County for Water Resources section. I just wanted to say thank you for this presentation and just kind of piggyback on a comment from Christian Carolina where it's been acknowledged that we have very limited land space, but also an idea that we can maybe incorporate is retrofitting some of the stormwater pond areas that we have into smart ponds that possibly would allow us to hold that water while at the same time using it as a sort of filtration system. So it'll allow us to use what we already have. If we can find more spaces, obviously that's also ideal, but just kind of incorporating that natural-based solution as well within what we have and kind of how Carolina said, work together in order to move the water, but also have it treated in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent comment.
And then just a follow-up question. So for those retrofitting stormwater pond to smart pond, do you have any specific locations in mind? Or we can follow up on this one if it's not on top of your head.
Perhaps we could unmute Karina again.
Hey, Karina, I think I have your email. I can follow up with you on this one.
Oh, Karina has her hand up again. Perfect. Okay, perfect. Unmute, Karina. I think we have you
I'm
live
sorry,
now.
I was talking, but I can't unmute myself, so I'm like, I'm here. Yeah, we are trying, our team is definitely trying to lead on this, and we're actively looking for certain locations that we can incorporate retrofitting as well as looking for new spaces to incorporate these solutions. So this is definitely something that we want to be working along with the district, even resiliency with our own teams in order to move these things forward. But actually, yes, we're very much looking to see where are some pockets that we can incorporate this.
Okay.
Karina, maybe you can talk a little bit about casting off some innovative technologies that can help us, our ongoing discussions that can help us on potential, green infrastructure, nature-based solutions that have augmented power to really help us with the water quality goals and with this pollution.
No, absolutely. I think yeah, we can talk about that. You cut off a little bit in the beginning, Carolina, so I wasn't able to understand what you said.
No problems. I was just saying that we have been partnering to test some innovative technology that would help. Yeah, those water quality.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we have a ongoing project that we are setting up that would be addressing exactly that. How can we combine storage, nature-based solutions, green infrastructure to maximize the potential to reduce pollutants in the basin?
Absolutely, yeah. That's something we're currently working on as we speak.
I know. Thank you, Karina. And I want to just add to the comment from the waterkeeper. We have already submitted sites along the C-7 to their green infrastructure project. We have been coordinating very closely with the waterkeeper and the grant that they received to work on those site selections. I don't know if there is anybody on the call that wants to say anything else, but they are putting up requests for sites that we could implement those green infrastructure. And we have we submitted to them a series of our sites that we pre-selected at the C7 Basin and also other basins in Miami and Broward. Miami mostly, I apologize.
Wonderful, good to know. I'd like to move on to Christia. And again, just reminding folks if they could introduce themselves, the organizations.
I'm Christia Alou. I'm the village manager of the village of El Portal. And I appreciate this exchange and the conversation. And so I have a question about how can we know what those locations are that you're identifying for green infrastructure development? Because, you know, we have the C7 that is just south of our village that abuts several properties. And I know of specific areas that could be developed or utilized. And also we have a storm water improvement project that, you know, could add to this, because we've talked about retrofitting or, you know, just developing what exists. So how would we know what those locations that you all have identified for development? And also, what are they, if you already know them?
Hey,
So,
Christia, this is Hong Ying. Actually, we have not, for this phase 2 study, we have not identified those exact location of to be implemented green infrastructures yet. So that's one of the goal of this workshop. What we showed on the map is what we see some open spaces based on the information we can get from GIS. So here we are kind of get input from you all to see how can we really to identify what are the feasible options for green infrastructures.
Okay, well then I'll tell you that you know, the ones I know on C7, because I didn't know if you already had something in mind or not. But you know, we have 2 properties on the west side of the village. One is at 87th, Northwest 86th and Northwest 2nd Avenue. It's a Miami-Dade County Transportation and Public Works right of way. It's at the large, you know, at the footbridge that goes over the so that's a property. I don't know what's being done with it since it doesn't belong to the village, but we maintain it as a park. But certainly more can be done there, or, you know, we're, you know, very excited to see something more happen in that location. And there's also a vacant lot that's operated by Miami-Dade County that's just a bit west of that. And it's at Northwest 86th and Northwest 5th Avenue. Big vacant lot already utilized by the county, but perhaps there's some, like you said, retrofitting or, you know, developing it in green infrastructure there. And also in the village of El Portal, there is an area called El Jardín, which is at Northeast 86th between Northeast 2nd Avenue and North Miami Avenue. Heavy flooding in that area. We did a stormwater improvement in that area, but we don't have an outfall. None of the residents who abut that C7 would allow the village an easement. We only needed 7 feet, you know, from the property line to put the outfall there. They wouldn't agree to it. Just people felt like, oh, if you give this to you, I won't be able to resell or decreases my property value. Meanwhile, the flooding continues, and I'm sure that decreases the property value even more. But if there could be something done in that area, you'd see a lot of relief as well. So those are 3 locations in in El Portal that I can name off the top of my head. And we also have Sherwood Forest, which is at Northeast 86 and Northeast, like Northeast 2nd, between Northeast 2nd and Northeast 4th. That area also has a lot of flooding, and again, right on the water. There could be outfalls. We have an outfall in that area, but a bigger one or just something more can be done. So hopefully that's adding to your inventory as you collect it.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any of these documented or anything written up on these? I mean, we have the notes now from what you said, but we'd love any further information you have on these.
I'll write it. I'll send you some things. Yeah, by end of day.
Okay, great. Ann's email will be there at the end if you don't mind sending it to her. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we want. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, you're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for allowing, for opening it up. Okay.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's go ahead and move on to, I apologize for mispronouncing your name, Antenna? If you could come off of mute. We're not hearing you in case you. Oh, now we do. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Antenna Abbey from the Everglades Foundation. I'm a hydrogeologist. I think this is a very informative session. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to learn what's happening. I would like to say, though, the modeling report would have been more informative if we have seen model performance evaluation and how it actually represents the ground condition. All models have their own limitations. MIXI has its own limitations. So having it representative to the ground condition is very, very important for making decisions like this. I would love to see a report where we could evaluate further in detail. Next, when we talk about sea level rise and different scenarios, we're also talking about saltwater intrusion. I have not seen any thing that refers to saltwater intrusion, but as you know, with sea level rise and saltwater intrusion, there is a high possibility of flooding attributed to rising groundwater levels. And incorporating that would be very, very important for studies like this. There are mentions of using a water conservation area and STS, moving water to the west. I'm not sure how practical this is. The natural hydraulic gradient is from west to east, and it's very, very steep. That area where we have water conservation area 3B, and it's eastward developed area have a very, very high hydraulic conductivity. And therefore, trying to divert the natural flow direction would be practically impossible. We have seen this in projects like BBCR modeling efforts. And so I just would like to put this out there. And also, what's the water quality impact if we were able to do that? Because SKS and water conservation areas have their own expected water quality restrictions. There are mentions of treatment storage areas in different places, like Carolina said. So treatment storage is very important, but land availability is, I think, the issue that I see here. There were some mentions of land. The speaker before me, I think that's important to acknowledge the local people who knows what is available and what's not. But a mention of like high school, and I think a football field and high school, all that, is that really practical or just mentioning it? Because football, high school field, football field is used for some other purpose. If there is a detailed report of the modeling, we would like to evaluate it. My colleague Ishtak is also on the call. We would like to evaluate it and probably provide some feedback, comments written. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. Over.
Hey, this is Hong Ying. I will try to provide this, not answer all of your questions, but I will try to address some of your questions. So first one, regarding the modeling report and the model files, yes, it will be available for normally we archive everything, and it will be available if you send us your email. We will definitely share it with you. So that's for the report and the modeling files. And
Yeah. What was mentioned on slide number 44 from Mr. Michael's presentation, so it could possibly move water to escape. So I'm referring to the slide that is already presented.
I don't fully capture what you're saying. Do you mind to repeat?
So if you go back to the slide number 44, yeah, you can see that there is a need to put the water back to escape.
Oh, okay, we will revise it. And I believe that what we were thinking is just a mining pits on the west side.
Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ingram.
Yes, how are you?
Thank you.
Good. Going back to that last slide as far as hot spots and possible green infrastructure. One of the definite hotspots that you all have already located and acknowledged is the Northwest 17th Avenue between Northwest 107th Street and along that C-7 canal that goes down into 103rd, where you're going to use a portion of Turner Tech's field to be utilized as a place where water can be used, I guess, storage area. But I also have a question about on Northwest 107th Street, intersecting with that Northwest 18th Avenue canal. I think one of the engineers said that the 18th Avenue is the natural connection for the Little River. Miami-Dade put a Biscayne Bay water quality characteristic pollution reduction filter along Northwest 107th Street to try to mitigate some of the phosphorus going into the Little River Canal and exiting out to the Biscayne Bay. But I wanted to locate for you a natural-based solution and green infrastructure. If you look at the GIS map of that location of Northwest 107th Street between Northwest 17th Avenue and Northwest 18th Avenue, there's a green space that's actually owned by the village of Miami Shores, that there are some native Florida trees. It's basically an urban forest within a suburban area. And I wanted to maybe possibly have you all look into working with the Village of Miami Shores to possibly work with that green space that they presently own. And also going back to Miss Davis from Miami-Dade Parks and Recreation and Open Spaces. There's a park that lies in the center of the Silver Blue Lake. And that park, unfortunately, has not been well kept over the years. But what we have is private developers saying that they're going to come in and retrofit and do all these projects. but we acknowledge that maybe sometimes they say something, but they don't always follow through. So I wanted to know if the Miami-Dade Parks and Recreations are developing programs with the FWC to talk about water quality conservation, talk about the importance of blue and green spaces within urban settings, and also reducing heat islands in these urban areas. That's what I guess I got to stop there because I know it's a lot to say, but there's a lot going on within the community where that we're looking at environmental justice, but also environmental equity, because even with the Little River Adaptation Plan and sea level rise, the study only goes from 95 eastward into the bay. It doesn't account for the pollution that's coming out of the city of Hialeah, the city of Opelika, that's filtering into the C-7 canal that's going into the Biscayne Bay. And it's already been identified that the Little River is one of those hot spots that needs to be looked at as far as reducing pollution, which I'm happy that they put the filters in. But I wanted to also know, as far as preserving some of the green spaces that are presently in that area, that's providing some type of filtration for the environment, for the air quality, but also as far as when the C-7 canal floods, that green space between 18th Avenue and 17th Avenue is fully saturated with water. And another question was the hydrology of the Silver Blue Lake. Has, from your mapping, it shows that there is a connection between the storage, the Silver Blue Lake, and the C-7 canals at extreme flood rates. That there is a connection as far as the underground connection, as far as the hydrology. Is that correct?
Hey, Mr. Ingram, do you mind pause for a second? We will have
Yes,
one of
ma'am.
our modeler to bring the GIS map to the screen so we can orient it to those locations you are talking about. Joe, do you mind share your screen with the map?
Sure. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, there is a small connection, hydraulically connected C-7 Silver Blue Lake. It's a small culvert underground.
And can you hear me?
Yes.
How is that when it comes to that connection, when it comes to the connection, how will that affect the groundwater and the drinking water within in that general area if any type of pollutants are put into that lake, and the effect that would have on the C-7 canal, but also the drinking water and the environmental issues and concerns that we would have in the area from that?
So, Mr. Ingram, yeah, you asked a very good question. Yeah, and as water quality impact, water quality assessment is being assessed actually by multi-agency under a different category. I think I know district, Army Corps, counties, and universities, they're all been doing some collaboration to do those water quality type of assessment. And yeah, I will make sure if I have those information handy, I will pass those information to you. But for this one, we are not specifically assessing, doing water quality assessment for those type of connections.
Okay. And you see the green space along the northwest. If you look at the green space that I was speaking of, that's owned by the Village of Miami Shores, and you also see a southwestern bank on Northwest 105th Street, that on that bend of C-7. Presently, there's green space there, but there's a project that is planned to develop that entire green space into multiple units that would take away all of this entire green space area. My home is in the corner of that 17th Avenue area, which I received flooding, but that 18th Avenue spur canal that's coming off of Northwest 7th, 107th Street, floods tremendously. So this entire area, that little green space that you see along with the Silver Blue Lake, is very important to be really looked at and studied as far as from a conservation use, but also from possibly developing that into a park and recreations. And if you notice, if you look along the 22nd Avenue corridor, there's a bunch of warehouses in white. This area used to be the Westview Golf Course. That green space was taken away to put warehouses in that area. It created a heat island, but it also took away water storage for our area. And adjacent to that, now we have Lennar Homes that has built a multi-unit complex. So the green space that you see north of 119th Street is no longer there. And if you look on 22nd Avenue and Northwest 19th Street, the lake that's there to the right, there was a developer that tried to illegally start dumping into that lake to build a project in that area. So there's a lot of development that is going on without the proper correlation with the studies that are presently happening as far as the C-7 study and also the 216. My last question. When the Army Corps of Engineers opens up the opens up the gates for the southern south of Okeechobee as far as the Everglades Restoration Project, as far as the storm infrastructure and the canals, presently we already see a higher level than normal in our area of the C-7 canal. How is that going to affect presently the flood resiliency in our area as far as what we're already in a flood risk zone, but how will now that impact us in the future? Yeah, all of that's gone now. That green space that you see north of Northwest 119th Street and 22nd Avenue, adjacent of those warehouses, that's all been built up. In the past, that was a green space where the water from the Biscayne spur canals would flood into, but presently that is no longer, that map is inaccurate because right now that development is full of Lennar Homes there. Lennar Homes at Westview is what it's called.
Mr. Ingram, I think you asked a lot of very, very good questions. Yeah, I'm making a lot of notes. And in addition to making notes for all of your questions, and I think I did get some feedback from county, and what they are sharing with us is for any development in Miami-Dade County, the developer definitely will need to provide signed and sealed engineering reports to demonstrate there's no adverse effect to surrounding properties. So that's definitely something for you to look into, to no adverse effect to surrounding properties from any development. So yeah, all
Yes.
are very, very good questions. I definitely hear your concerns.
Thank you. And I just, like I said, this is some neighbors and constituents that live also in the village of El Portal, because we're in an area of unincorporated Miami-Dade, and the Commissioner Basin is commissioner of the District 2. And because we have so many municipalities that are in this area, it's a lot of projects, but there's also a lot of pollution that's going into the C-7 canal that's possibly going unchecked that needs to be done. But I appreciate this project going through so that everyone is aware of what's going on within these unincorporated areas where we don't necessarily have the voice of some of the bigger cities that surround us. So thank you for this opportunity to present from not only the community, but also for the future of Miami-Dade County and the Everglades Restoration Project, and also the resiliency of all of Miami-Dade County and the state of Florida and the United States. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Munir, if there is something that, just to reinforce our support, if there is something out of this study that you need packaged somehow, just help in summarizing so you have the right information and the right assumptions. This is something we can discuss internally and with the county. I mean, how we are a summary of some of the results that might be useful for you. So let us know if this is something that you would benefit and if you need any help from us.
It definitely would, ma'am, because at the commissioner meetings, if I only have 2 minutes to speak and we just use the 2 hours possibly to present everything that was said, there's a very vast information. There's a information gap for me being a citizen, a concerned citizen, that the higher ups in the resiliency department and South Florida Water Management, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers really have to communicate with the commissioners to let them know that these projects really have to be vetted correctly if we really want to build a resilient Miami-Dade County. These developments have to be vetted to make sure that they aren't passed to say we need affordable housing when we don't have enough drinking water by 2050, according to the report. So I'm just trying to prepare, like I said, from the other meetings that I met you all, to try to get ahead of the projects that are coming, because what we presently have in this unincorporated area of Westview is I think is a very critical, it's a very critical environmental concern, because these areas provide more than just water storage. They provide an ecosystem for bald eagles that come and roost and nest on that lake. There's so many migratory birds that pass through this area that no longer have any spaces to live, and the community is also at risk, because when we eventually have the opportunity to have a green space, then it's just about taken away. We have so many issues as far as environmental justice and equity, that I'm just trying to voice and sound the alarm that if we want our children and senior citizens and veterans to live in a prosperous environment, we have to create green and blue spaces for them to go and, disconnect from social media and all the other things that are causing distress and disease in people's lives. So thank you very much for the time and opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram.
You're welcome.
I'd like to move us now to next steps. And I welcome introducing Ann Springston. We've mentioned her name several times throughout the presentation, and she's the project manager for the South Florida Water Management District, and she's going to let us know what's coming up. And also keep in mind that you'll see her email address and be able to send more information to her as well. Ms. Springston, take it away.
Great. Thank you, Lynette. We really have appreciated and enjoyed this sharing of information today. And the next steps for our FPLOS study will be to collate and formulate these mitigation strategies and suggestions that have been brought to us and that we've discovered ourselves. So we want to remind you that this survey link that came out with the invitation of this meeting will remain open. So feel free to go in there and answer the questions and input any flood data or project data in there that you would like us to consider and talk about as we move forward. So we will move forward by doing some analyses of all these suggestions. And part of this will be trying to come up with a strategy of the mitigations that will be utilized in the C-7 basin. Next slide, please. So during these analyses, we're going to hold bi-weekly meetings. It's where we discuss interim results, any issues that have popped up, and the path forward. We want to continue our collaboration of these efforts. So we're going to invite you to join us at these meetings so you can have your input considered, hear our discussions, and comment. So here's the email address that we've promised the entire meeting, asprings@swfmd.gov. If you want to be invited to these meetings, please send me an email with your point of contact, your name, and your email address, and we will ensure that you get these invites to these meetings so you can join us. So our next steps are going to include ongoing coordination and sharing with the other studies so that this information can be freely exchanged and duplication of efforts minimized. The final result of our collaborative efforts on this study will be a recommended adaptation and mitigation strategy for the C-7 basin, which will include local and regional components. Next slide, please. So there's a technical way to get to this recommendation. So these are the next steps that will be taken. Our team will complete modeling and other analyses of the mitigation strategies to look at the flood reduction benefits. Then we will determine the flood damage reduction of these strategies. We will recommend a final mitigation strategy for the C-7 basin. We complete a cost-benefit analysis of the recommendation, and then we evaluate the downstream impact and downstream water quality impact of the recommendation. And finally, we produce a project implementation sequence using adaptation, pathway, and planning approach. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Anne. And to close, I welcome Dr. Madahel Ansar. Dr. Ansar is the District Interim Bureau Chief of the Hydrology and Hydraulic Bureau. So, Dr. Ansar, if you could take it away and close us up.
Hey, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, coming in well.
Great, excellent. First, I would like to thank the project team for putting together this excellent workshop. I also like to thank our IT staff, Devon, Daniel, for making this Zoom call seamlessly. It's something we take almost for granted, but it's really important. Of course, I'd like to echo what Dr. Moran said about the attendee. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and come talk to us today. We heard a great deal of excellent feedback, suggestions, comments. The project team will compile this, assess them, and see how they align with the project objective and circle back with you. That's all I have. Just grateful for everybody's great work on this. Thank you. Ned.
Wonderful. Thank you. I want to just genuinely echo the enthusiasm from the team on being able to receive this sort of this sort of feedback. And you'll be able to access the slides shortly. We'll be able to send out a link to them, and that way you have the information, you have the points of contact. And like we said, it's important for us to continue the conversation and go ahead and send information directly to Anne. And I'm going to stop there and see if I've missed any closing comments. Anything from the team? Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. And as I like to say, this is a to be continued. We look forward to continuing the conversation with you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.